Hello everyone, thank you for welcoming me into your home and dedicating the time to hear what I have to say about this month's astrological influences. We're in early August, August 2nd. We actually had the mid-summer point, and we can see how very quickly the summer is passing us by. And that just means that we need to be that much more aware of really being in the moment. You know, many times in the past I've talked about how time seems as though it's passing very quickly these days. But metaphysically and spiritually, what we're becoming more aware of is our spiritual self. And in spirit, time does not exist. So because we are becoming much more aware of spirit, or rather we are being given the opportunity to become much more aware of our spiritual being, the physical world, the dimensions of the physical world has seemingly become less and less relative, and so it seems as though time is passing very quickly. So with that, we want to remember to really appreciate the moment that we are in, and to really be present and in the moment and all that we are experiencing in this one moment. I'd like to touch upon something that actually began in July, which on July 25th, Venus began its 2-year retrograde phase, and that lasts until about September 5th. As I said, Venus will go retrograde about every 2 years. And the significance of a Venus retrograde is, one, certainly we don't want to schedule marriages during a Venus retrograde, and we certainly do not want to begin relationships during a Venus retrograde. We also do not necessarily want to make investments during a Venus retrograde. Venus connects with money as it does our relationships, so anything money related we don't necessarily want to embark upon during a Venus retrograde. Again, all that we talk about during these experiences, during these videos, are suggestions. You know, we really need to look at things very specifically when we're looking at anything astrologically. That's why I always suggest, whenever you read anything astrologically, really take it with a grain of salt. And unless someone's looking at your astrological chart, you really will not get a complete and comprehensive understanding of the influences that are taking place with your astrological chart. As I said, on July 25th, Venus went retrograde. During a Venus retrograde, we want to use that time to review our relationships, review the relationships that we are in. If we're not in a relationship and we truly desire to have the experience of a relationship, it's a time for us to reflect upon what it is that is our desires that we would choose to experience in a relationship, and to become very clear with those desires. See, like anything else, whenever we are very clear with what it is that we desire with our relationships or anything else, the greater that is our clarity, the easier it is for spirit, humanity, the universe to bring us exactly what it is that we truly desire. Because the universe only reflects everything that's inside of us. It mirrors back everything that we vibrate and everything that we set in motion. All our experiences are just reflections of what's happening inside of us. We had a second full moon at the end of July, on July 31st, in the sign of Aquarius. You know, I've mentioned many times in my forecasts, in my recent forecasts, in my recent videos, the sign of Aquarius is a sign of humanitarianism. And many times, so that we can become aware of our own humanitarian self and what it is that we can contribute to humanity to help to raise the vibration of humanity. Sometimes we see very less than humanitarian things taking place in the physical world, and certainly we have seen many of those experiences, much of those circumstances coming to the surface, especially in these last few months. You know, sometimes in order for us to recognize what we need not be, we are being given that example. And also too, whenever anything manifests in the physical world, it's only a reflection of all that takes place in the collective unconsciousness of humanity. So many times when we are seeing some very less than humanitarian experiences in the physical world, we're really being given the opportunity to reflect on that part of us that might exist within ourselves that we may not necessarily need to set in motion and to demonstrate. Sometimes we need to recognize hot so that we recognize cold. We need to see the negative so that we recognize the positive. Also, negative and positive are really vibrations of everything and all that exists. We can't necessarily never not have negative experiences or not observe negative experiences. What we have a choice in doing is to not allow those negative experiences, that negativity, to interfere with our free will. And when we empower ourselves and we recognize the empowerment and the connection that we have with spirit that is inside of us, that's when we begin to recognize and understand how whenever anything negative may unfold around us, it need not have any interference or any unpleasantries upon our well-being. In this month of August, the Sun will move into the sign of Virgo. Right now, we're still in the sign of Leo. Actually, on August 8th, Mars will go into the sign of Leo. Mars is the planet of action. Leo is the Leo is the sign of creativity. It's also the sign of divinity. When Mars goes into the sign of Leo, it really energizes our creativity, our divinity. Mars is the planet of energy. It's the planet of action. Wherever Mars passes through the zodiac, it invigorates, it creates action in that specific area. So as Mars goes through the sign of Leo, our creativity in all forms, in all aspects. Creativity doesn't necessarily pertain to just art and music. We are creative beings. All facets of our being, all parts of our being really are connected with creativity. As I've mentioned in prior forecasts, Leo is also the sign of divinity. So as Mars goes through the sign of Leo, it energizes our creativity and also our understanding of our connection with divinity and how we can apply that energy and use that energy into our creative endeavors with whatever it is that they might be. Also, Jupiter will change signs this month as well. On August 11th, Jupiter moves into the sign of Virgo. Just as Mars energizes wherever it touches throughout the zodiac, Jupiter expands upon those energies. Just look at how big Jupiter is. Jupiter is the biggest planet in our solar system. It's massive, and wherever it touches, wherever it goes throughout our charts, throughout the zodiac, it expands upon those energies. As Jupiter goes through the sign of Virgo, as it transits the sign of Virgo, the understanding of our service to humanity is what is expanded upon. There's so many similarities in the elements of the energies that are taking place right now. The humanitarian element, and now with Jupiter through the sign of Virgo, we are being given the opportunity to recognize and really understand what is our service to humanity. And it really doesn't matter what that is, and it really comes from our intention and also recognizing and understanding what it is that we know to be our purpose. With the sign of Leo, being the sign of creativity, it also connects us with our purpose. It also connects us with what it is that we are passionate about. Whenever it is that we allow ourselves to recognize our passion, whatever it is that brings us great joy, whatever it is that we really, really, really love to do, in my understanding, that has a direct connection with our purpose and what it is that we need to experience and become while we are in this human form. The sign of Aquarius is the polar opposite of Leo. So we have the Leo-Aquarius axis. And Aquarius, as I said, it's a sign of the humanitarian. With that Leo Aquarius access, what I suggest is recognizing the passion and the purpose, because that will then lead us to being humanitarian. And that's how that Leo Aquarius access works and has a function from a much higher vibration. So, as Jupiter goes through the sign of Virgo, let us recognize what is our service to humanity. Also, Virgo is the sign of well-being. We could use this time to also recognize what it is that we need to do that will allow us to really continue experience the physical well-being in our physical form. Because in order for us to really connect with our purpose, and rather for us to demonstrate that purpose, we need to exist in physical form from a high vibration. And the physical vehicle that we need to exist in this human experience needs to be in top-notch form. So as Jupiter goes through the sign of Virgo, let us recognize what we need to do for ourselves personally. Understand what works for your physical body. Because what works for me in terms of how I care for myself may not necessarily work for another. So I would encourage everyone to recognize what your personal physical body needs for itself to operate at a high vibrational place. And then notice how everything else also certainly begins to change as well in your lives. On August 14th, we have our new moon in the sign of Leo. Again, I don't need to reiterate Leo, the sign of creativity, divinity, the energy of recognizing our path and our purpose and our passion. In the chart that's cast in the new moon chart that's cast in the United States, actually we have that placement, the placement of the new moon in the 11th house. The 11th house of the astrological chart, it's the house of Aquarius. It's the house of the humanitarian. So once again, these connections here in the United States especially are very strong. That we recognize ourselves as humanitarian and what it is that we are doing in our own unique way to offset negativity out in the world. We're seeing so much less than humanitarian things take place in the world, and we're not here to judge what happens in the world. We're not here to deem something to be right or wrong. That's not our place to do that. We're only here to recognize our purpose, our passion, and what we can do to set in motion to raise that vibration, and not to judge what takes place in the outside world, and only to be responsible for ourselves. Let's use this time of the new moon to recognize our creativity. Let's recognize our passion, which will lead us to recognizing our purpose and what we can do to raise the vibration and the consciousness of humanity. On August 23rd, the sun moves into the sign of Virgo. As I said, Virgo is the sign of our service to humanity. It's the sign of well-being, our physical health. Also, the opposite of Virgo is the sign of Pisces, and actually our full moon is going to be in the sign of Pisces, but I want to touch upon the Virgo-Pisces axis. As I talked about the Leo-Aquarius axis, the axis of Virgo and Pisces. Virgo connects with the mind. Virgo is ruled by Mercury. A low vibration of Virgo is when we become over analytical and we become very critical, certainly of ourselves as well as others. The sign of Pisces, Pisces wants to feel. Pisces is a sign, it's ruled by Neptune, the sign that is most associated with and connected to spirituality and also the psychic faculties. In order for us to really recognize what Spirit shares with us psychically, we need to move past our thoughts and reflect on our feelings. When we move past our thoughts, when our minds become very quiet, that's when the feelings begin to become very clear, and then we recognize what it is that Spirit shares with us. So as we move through the month of August. Later on in August, on August 29th, we have our full moon, and the full moon is in the sign of Pisces. And what's interesting with this full moon, the moon and Neptune are in close proximity to one another, and the opposite end of the spectrum is the Sun and Jupiter. So these axes that I'm talking about are very much amplified and highlighted at this time, with the full moon in Pisces and connecting to the planet Neptune, the planet of high vibrational spirituality. We're being encouraged and really given opportunities to recognize these energies within ourselves. A lower vibration of that form, when it manifests in the physical world, many times it's demonstrated as certain types of virus outbreaks, and we could be seeing a little bit more of that taking place. Also, I encourage everyone to recognize that because something manifests in the physical world, it does not have to have reflection on our well-being. You know, as I'm talking about how the energy and the understanding of well-being, how we care for ourselves, is a factor that's very much amplified at this time, and with the possibility of seeing outbreaks of virus pandemics out in the physical world, we are given the opportunity to recognize that need not interfere with our well-being. You know, certainly we don't tell anyone what to do medically. We can only offer our spiritual and metaphysical insights. As I've always said, all that we experience really is just a reflection of what's happening inside of us, of the thoughts that we generate. Certainly if we project fear onto something, we could bring those experiences that we may not necessarily choose to have upon us. So let's be reflective of those thoughts, especially as the sun is in the sign of Virgo, and the energy of Virgo is amplified with the planet Mercury and the energies of our mind. As we go into next month, and with my video for September, I will be talking about this series of eclipses that are taking place in September. As I discussed before, eclipses are power energy points during the course of the year. Many times significant turn of events take place during the time of eclipse, and I will highlight that the next time we meet in early September. So until then, stay in the light and always in a place of love. Blessed be. Namaste.